Good afternoon. How are you this afternoon? It's Wednesday, but we are doing Nana's story time today because I've been in Arizona where it was nice and warm. And this morning when I got up and it was early, it was beautiful. The sun was coming up and it was beautiful and not too cold at all. But when we landed here in Utah, at noon, it was kind of cold and the wind is blowing again or still. So how many of you like dragons and the story of dragons? I have a story of a little boy named Matthew and his dragon that I want to share today. So it is called Matthew's Dragon. Now, we can find out, was it a big dragon? Was it a little dragon? Did he have fire coming out his mouth? Let's find out. Matthew's mother was sitting on his bed reading him a bedtime story. She had just turned the last page. And so the dragon flew back to his castle and pulled up the drawbridge and went to sleep, she said. She held up the picture of the sleeping dragon to show Matthew and closed the book. Just one more, said Matthew hopefully. All his favorite stories were about dragons. His mother said firmly, tomorrow. She put the book on the bedside table and tucked him in. Good night, Matthew. Sleep tight. Matthew sighed. Night. He snuggled down as his mother kissed the top of his head and turned out the lamp. The door closed behind her. In the dark room, Matthew shut his eyes. And then he opened them again. And he gasped. What do you think he saw? Look at this. Look at the book sitting on his nightstand. The cover of the book on the bedside table was moving gently up and down, and a green light was shining out of the pages. Very cautiously, Matthew reached out his hand from under the blankets, and with one finger he pushed up the cover from under the blankets, and with one finger he pushed up the cover. As the book opened, the green light flooded into the room, and from the picture on the last page, the dragon sat up, and he grinned at him. I didn't go to sleep, the dragon said in a surprisingly deep voice. He was a small but extremely beautiful dragon. Matthew recognized him instantly. His skin was bright green, the scales on his back and tail were golden, and his eyes shone red as rubies. I don't want to go to sleep, the dragon said. Do you? Matthew stared at him. No, he said hastily. And no, I don't. Not at all. What's going to happen? Come on then, the dragon said. He reached out one shining golden claw. Matthew pushed back the blankets, and suddenly he was as small as the dragon. Standing beside him on the sloping white floor that was the page of the book. Dazed, he took the outstretched golden claw, and the dragon swung him up so that he was sitting on the dragon's back. Between the handsome gold-crested head and the curving green wings. You see the wings and the head, and Matthew is sitting right on top. And then, "Hold tight," said the dragon, and he took off from the bedside table and glided to the windowsill, where Matthew's mother always left the window open a few inches to let in fresh air. Outside the window, Matthew could see a silvery curved bridge stretching into the night. It arched through the air and down to the ground, glinting in the moonlight. "It's your drawbridge," he said. Here he goes. He's taking off. "Get off my back or you'll bang your head," said the dragon. Together, they slipped under the window and onto the shining bridge and ran down, down, down into the garden. You see that glittery silver bridge here? Right under the window. When Matthew looked back, the bridge had disappeared. All he could see was the big full moon high in the sky above the dark shape. There's the moon over the big dark shape. And it was the shape of the maple tree that grew out of the lawn, and all around him enormous blades of grass wider than his hand and higher than his head. Now that he was a very small person, it was not so easy to go across the lawn. "Come on," said the dragon. He pushed boldly through the forest of grass, and Matthew fought his way after him. "Dragon, where are you going?" "For a little bedtime snack," the dragon said happily. You see the dragon? He's going through the grass. And there is Matthew right there behind him, following his little tail. Now the grass ended, and they were facing a huge expanse of gray rocks, each one as big as Matthew's head. And Matthew stared. It was the gravel path leading to his father's greenhouse. All those little rocks, when you're a big person, they don't look so big. But when you're a little person, now they are big. He started out across it, but he heard the dragon give a sudden, loud shriek, a strange, rusty sound like the hoot of a train, and a dragon wing knocked him sprawling back into the grass as a great black shape hurtled over their heads. What was that big, great, big, black shape? "Quick!" The dragon pulled him to his feet, and they ran, stumbling over the gray rocks. "Quick! Quick!" Matthew tried to look over his shoulder, but the dragon pulled him sideways through a thin black gap between two towering white walls. The black cat, chasing them, big as a horse, crashed into the floor of the greenhouse and snarled with rage. Matthew and the dragon were safe inside the greenhouse. The door was open just a crack, just enough for them, but not enough for the cat. The dragon said cheerfully, "He thought we were his bedtime snack. Well, we are not." "That's the cat next door," Matthew said. "He's mean. I saw him catch a bird once and play with it like a tennis ball, and then he killed it." "Oh, that doesn't sound like a very nice kitty cat." There's the cat. He's looking inside the window at Matthew and the dragon. You see him? They're kind of saying, "You can't come in." "Come on," the dragon said. He took hold of a strand of ivy dangling from the greenhouse shelf and began to climb up it. Matthew struggled up after him, and when he got to the top, he found the dragon perched triumphantly on the edge of a large flower pot. The pot held one of Matthew's father's dwarf tomato plants, his pride and joy. He had grown 6 of them, all standing in a row, and all covered with delicious little cherry tomatoes. Do you like tomatoes? Do you like little cherry tomatoes? Snack time, said the dragon. He reached up a claw and picked a bright red cherry, a red cherry tomato, which to Matthew now seemed the size of a large grapefruit. Remember, they're just little people now. Excellent, said the dragon with his mouth full of vitamin C, good for the wings. Matthew had no wings, but he ate a tomato, just to be friendly. The dragon ate 6. Then he sighed contentedly and burped. And any sign of the cat, he said. Matthew peered out at the moonlit garden. It was much larger than usual, but empty. Nothing moved. All clear, he said. Look at those cherry tomatoes. The dragon is loving them. Matthew's eating one. I have some granddaughters who love cherry tomatoes, and I have some other grandkids that don't. Some do, and some don't. Now they climbed to the ground again and slipped cautiously out through the greenhouse. Matthew breathed the cool night air. He smelled honeysuckle. You know what honeysuckle is? Honeysuckle is a very fragrant flower bush, and it has a nice, beautiful smell. But although Matthew couldn't see it, the cat was still there, fat and greedy, light-footed and sly. It lurked on the edge of the greenhouse roof, watching and waiting. It saw their moving figures. The dragon looked prickly, it decided, but that other one looked smooth and tasty. A very nice mouthful, like a large mouse. It leaped. Matthew shouted in terror as a diving black shape knocked him to the ground, trapping him under one fierce paw. He was caught. He couldn't move. He stared up horrified into the gleaming yellow eyes, the grinning mouth full of pointed white teeth. The cat crouched, triumphant and gloating. First it would play with this creature like a tennis ball, and then, ooh, he looks like he's about ready to eat Matthew. And then knocked and end over end by the cat's jump, the dragon turned a final somersault and landed on his feet. He stood still, watching the cat. His eyes began to glow red as a cherry, and he took a deep, deep breath, and he began to grow, and he grew, and he grew as big as the cat, and as big as the greenhouse, and as big as the house. He towered over the garden. His great shape darkened the sky, blotted out the moon. He was so huge that neither Matthew nor the cat knew that he was there. Lying terrified between the cat's paws, Matthew knew only that a great golden claw came down out of the sky, hooked itself into the belt of his pajama pants, and lifted him upward. The cat arched its spine, hissing. You see the big claw grabbing Matthew away from that big black cat. The dragon swung Matthew up onto his back to sit on his scaly neck between the handsome golden-crested head and the curving green wings. And then he reached his golden claw down again and picked up the cat. He swung it to and fro slowly, 20 feet in the air. That's a long ways. The cat yowled and terrified, and the dragon went on swinging, and the yowling became a shriek. Light streamed across the dark lawn as Matthew's father opened the back door of the house. "Go home, you stupid cat!" he yelled. High on the dragon's back, Matthew held his breath, but his father saw nothing. The dragon was so big now that he filled as much of the sky as the tall maple tree that grew out of the lawn. The back door closed. The dragon swung the yowling cat over to a big barrel that collected rainwater. From the greenhouse roof, he dropped the cat in with a splash, and Matthew cheered. There's his father coming out the door, and there's Matthew on top of the dragon's neck. That dragon got very big. "Hold on," the dragon said, and he flew. Higher and higher he flew in the night sky, curving around and around in a long rising spiral. His green wings spread huge and silent. The stars grew brighter as he rose closer to them. Far below, the lights of Matthew's town were spread like bright necklaces, glittering, and as he flew, the dragon sang. You see all the lights of the city, and the dragon is flying everywhere. He sang a long, wordless music, like the singing of the wind, like the singing of the sea. Matthew clung to his gold-scaled neck and listened in delight, and gradually he began to hear other voices, faint, growing, joining in. He peered out at the moon-washed sky and saw stars that were not stars, moving lights that grew larger and swooped closer. He saw then that they were dragons. Look at all those dragons. The sky is full of dragons now. From every part of the sky, the dragons came flying, turning, banking, sweeping over and under Matthew's dragon as if to greet him. All the time their voices rose and fell in unison, mysterious, beautiful, filling the sky with dragon song, and not one of them looked the same as any other. They were all colors and shapes and sizes. They were red dragons or green, silver or gold, steely gray. There were dragons with spiny iron claws, or dragons feathered soft as rainbows. For these, Matthew realized, were all the dragons ever put into the world of story. All kinds of dragons from all the different books that Matthew had read. Every dragon ever imagined was here, swirling around the sky. Every dragon that ever was. Matthew lay with his arms around his own dragon's neck and laughed aloud. They were all different, and he recognized them all. The horizon tilted as his dragon banked left and then right, and like great gleaming birds, all the other dragons swooped about him in a shifting cloud. There's so many different dragons. They're so colorful and beautiful. How many dragons have you seen? Then their music began to fade, and they fell into line so that they were flying in the long, wonderful arrowhead shape in which wild geese fly, or wild ducks, or swans. The long V of their arrowhead filled the whole sky, and Matthew and his dragon flew at the tip, leading all of them. Matthew's dragon lifted his golden crested head and called out with the same long dragon call that Matthew had heard before, the long rusty hoot, like the sound of a distant train. One by one, the other dragons hooted in return, calling in farewell, and one by one they banked away and disappeared into the wide sky. The dragon looked over his shoulder at Matthew. "Now I think I might go to sleep," he said. "How about you?" So many dragons. Matthew saw the glimmering curve of the drawbridge coming closer. As they dropped through the night, suddenly he gave a huge, "Oh, well, maybe," he said. And as they came to the shining bridge that led to Matthew's bedroom, all at once they were the right size to walk across it, and in through the open window. From the windowsill, Matthew glanced down at the house next door, and on the doorstep he saw a very wet and sulky cat, licking herself. He grinned. "Thank you, dragon," he said. "They were very good tomatoes," the dragon said. So Matthew climbed into bed, and Matthew's dragon climbed back inside the book and curled himself up into the pitcher he had come from. There he is. Matthew's in bed, he's asleep, and the dragon is yawning and stretching because he's ready to go to sleep. "Night, dragon," said Matthew. "Good night, Matthew," said the dragon. "See you tomorrow." And Matthew closed the book very gently, and they both went to sleep. There we go. There's the story of Matthew's dragon. Maybe you have read a story about a dragon. Maybe you have a make-believe dragon that you have seen and played with. But that's my story for today, is Matthew's dragon and how much fun he had with the dragon. I hope you have a great day, have a great evening, and we'll see you soon.